up, everybody? I'm Jason Kishinev. Welcome back to A People's Historian. We are going to finish Chapter 11 today out of A People's History of the United States. I promise. Let's just dig right in. When the Texas People's Party was founded in Dallas in the summer of 1891, it was interracial and radical. There were blunt and vigorous debate among whites and blacks. A black delegate, active in the Knights of Labor, dissatisfied with vague statements about equality, said, "If we are equal, why does not the sheriff summon Negroes on juries? And why hang up the sign Negro in passenger cars? I want to tell my people what the People's Party is going to do. I want to tell them if it is going to work a black and white horse in the same field." A white leader responded by urging that there be a black delegate from every district in the state. There in the ditch, just like we are, when someone suggested there be separate white and black populist clubs which would confer together, R.M. Humphrey, the white leader of the Colored Alliance, objected. "This will not do. The colored people are part of the people, and they must be recognized as such." 2 blacks were then elected to the state executive committee of the party. Blacks and whites were in different situations. The blacks were mostly field hands, hired laborers. Most White Alliance people were farm owners. When the Colored Alliance declared a strike in the cotton fields in 1891 for $1 a day wages for cotton pickers, Leonidas Polk, head of the White Alliance, denounced it as hurting the Alliance farmer who would have to pay that wage. In Arkansas, a 30-year-old black cotton picker named Ben Patterson led the strike, traveling from plantation to plantation to get support. His band growing, engaging in gun battles with the white posse. A plantation manager was killed. A cotton gin burned. Patterson and his band were caught, and 15 of them were shot to death. There was some black and white unity at the ballot box in the South, resulting in a few blacks elected in North Carolina local elections. An Alabama white farmer wrote to a newspaper in 1892, "I wish to God that Uncle Sam could put bayonets around the ballot box in the Black Belt on the first Monday in August so that the Negro could get a fair vote." There were black delegates to third-party conventions in Georgia, 2 to 1892, 24 in 1894. The Arkansas People's Party platform spoke for the downtrodden regardless of race. There were moments of racial unity. Lawrence Goodwin found in East Texas an unusual coalition of black and white public officials. It had begun during Reconstruction and continued into the populist period. The state government was in control of white Democrats, but in Grimes County, blacks won local offices and sent legislatures to the state capitol. The district clerk was a black man. There were black deputy sheriffs and a black school principal. A night-riding white man's union used intimidation and murder to split the coalition, but Goodwin points to the long years of interracial cooperation in Grimes County and wonders about missed opportunities. Racism was strong, and the Democratic Party played on this, winning many farmers from the Populist Party. When white tenants failing in the crop lien system were evicted from their land and replaced by blacks, race hatred intensified. Southern states were drawing up new constitutions, starting with Mississippi in 1890, to prevent blacks from voting by various devices and to maintain ironclad segregation in every aspect of life. The laws that took the vote away from blacks, poll taxes, literacy taxes, property qualifications, also often ensured that poor whites would not vote. And the political leaders of the South knew this. At the Constitutional Convention in Alabama, one of the leaders said he wanted to take away the vote from all those who were unfit and unqualified, and if the rule strikes a white man as well as a Negro, let him go. In North Carolina, the Carolina Observer saw disenfranchisement as the struggle of the white people of North Carolina to rid themselves of the dangers of the rules of Negroes and the lower class of whites. Ooh, that's ugly. Tom Watson, the populist leader of Georgia, pleaded for racial unity. You are kept apart that you may be separately fleeced of your earnings. You are made to hate each other because upon that hatred is rested the keystone of the arch of financial despotism which enslaves you both. You are deceived and blinded that you may not see how this race antagonism perpetuates a monetary system which beggars both. And that's still true, isn't it? They still got us pitted against each other so that they can make money. Keep us fighting each other. According to the black scholar Robert Allen, taking a look at populism, Watson wanted black support for a white man's party. No doubt when Watson found this support embarrassing and no longer useful, he became as eloquent in affirming racism as he had been in opposing it. Still, Watson must have addressed some genuine feelings in poor whites whose class oppression gave them some common interest with blacks. When H.S. Doyle, a young black preacher who supported Watson for Congress, was threatened by a lynch mob, he came to Watson for protection, and 2,000 white farmers helped Doyle escape. It was a time that illustrated the complexities of class and race conflict. 15 blacks were lynched during Watson's election campaign, and in Georgia after 1891, the Alliance-controlled legislature, Allen points out, passed the largest number of anti-black bills ever enacted in a single year in Georgia history. And yet, in 1896, the Georgia state platform of the People's Party denounced lynch law and terrorism and asked the abolition of the convict lease program. C. Van Woodward points to the unique quality of the populist experience in the South. Never before or since have the two races in the South come so close together. Never before or since have the two races in the South come so close together as they did during the populist struggles. The populist movement also made a remarkable attempt to create a new and independent culture for the country's farmers. The Alliance Lecture Bureau reached all over the country. It had 35,000 lecturers. The populists poured out books and pamphlets from their printing presses. Woodward says, one gathers from yellowed pamphlets that the agrarian ideologists undertook to re-educate their countrymen from the ground up, dismissing history as taught in our schools as practically valueless. They undertook to write it over, formidable columns of it from the Greek down. With no more compunction, they turned all hands to the revision of economics, political theory, law, and government. The National Economist, a populist magazine, had 100,000 readers. Goodwin counts over 1,000 populist journals in the 1890s. There were newspapers like The Comrade, published in the cotton country of Louisiana, and The Toiler's Friend in rural Georgia. Also, Revolution was published in Georgia. In North Carolina, the populist printing plant was burned. In Alabama, there was The Living Truth. It was broken into in 1892 Yeah, it did it again. It was broken into in 1892. Its type scattered, and the next year the shop was set afire. But the press survived, and the editor never missed an issue. Hundreds of poems and songs came out of the populist movement, like "The Farmer is the Man." The farmer is the man. Why do I want to sing it like the farmer is the devil? Sorry, it doesn't say to do that. The farmer is the man. The farmer is the man. Lives on credit till the fall. With the interest rates so high, it's a wonder he don't die, and the mortgage man's the one that gets it all. The farmer is the man. The farmer is the man. Lives on credit till the fall, and his pants are wearing thin. His condition, it's a sin. He's forgot that he's the man that feeds them all. Books written by populist leaders such as Henry Demarest Lloyd's Wealth Against Commonwealth and William Harvey Coyne's Financial School were widely read. An Alabama historian of that time, William Garrett Brown, said about the populist movement that no other political movement, not that of 1776, nor that of 1860, 1861, ever altered Southern life so profoundly. That is quite a statement. According to Lawrence Goodwin, if the labor movement had been able to do in the cities what the populists did in the rural areas, to create among urban workers a culture of cooperation, self-respect, and economic analysis, there might have been a great movement for change in the United States. There were only fitful occasional connections between the farmers and labor movements. Neither spoke eloquently enough to the other's needs, and yet there were signs of a common consciousness that might, under different circumstances, lead to a unified ongoing movement. Norman Pollock says, on the basis of a close study of Midwestern populist newspapers, that populism regarded itself as a class movement, reasoning that farmers and workers were assuming the same material position in society. An editorial in the Farmers Alliance spoke of a man working 14 to 16 hours a day. He is brutalized both morally and physically. He has no ideas, only propensities. He has no beliefs, only instincts. Pollock sees that as a homespun version of Marx's idea of workers' alienation from his human self under capitalism, and finds many other parallels between populist and Marxist ideas. Undoubtedly, populists, along with most white Americans, had racism and nativism in their thinking, but part of it was that they simply did not think race as important as the economic system. Thus, the Farmers Alliance said, the People's Party has sprang into existence not to make the black man free, but to emancipate all men, to gain for all industrial freedom, without which there can be no political freedom. More important than theoretical connections were the populist expressions of support for workers in actual struggles. The Alliance Independent of Nebraska, during the Great Strike at the Carnegie Steel Plant, wrote, "All who look beneath the surface will see that the bloody battle fought at Homestead was a mere incident in the great conflict between capital and labor." Hermione, everybody. Meow. Coxey's March of the Unemployed drew sympathy in the farm areas. In Osceola, Nebraska, perhaps 5,000 people attended a picnic in Coxey's honor. During the Pullman strike, a farmer wrote to the governor of Kansas, "Unquestionably, nearly, if not quite all Alliance people are in fullest sympathy with these striking men." On top of the serious failures to unite blacks and whites, city workers and country farmers, there was the lure of electoral politics, all of that combining to destroy the populist movement. Once allied with the Democratic Party and supporting William Jennings Bryan for president in 1896, Populism would drown in a sea of democratic politics. The pressure for electoral victory led populism to make deals with the major parties in city after city. If the Democrats won, it would be absorbed. If the Democrats lost, it would disintegrate. Electoral politics brought into the top leadership the political brokers instead of the agrarian radicals. There were those radical populists who saw this. They said fusion with the Democrats to try to win would lose what they needed, an independent political movement. They said the much ballyhooed free silver would not change anything fundamental in the capitalist system. One Texas radical said that silver coinage would leave undisturbed all the conditions which give rise to the undue concentration of wealth. Henry Demarest Lloyd noted that the Bryan nomination was subsidized in part by Marcus Daly of Anaconda Copper and William Randolph Hearst of the silver interest in the West. He saw through the rhetoric of Bryan that stirred the crowd of 20,000 at the Democratic Convention. We have petitioned and our petitions have been scorned. We have entreated and our entreaties have been disregarded. We have begged and they have mocked when our calamity came. We beg no longer. We entreat no more. We petition no more. We defy them. I'm unclear whether that's Lloyd speaking or Bryan. I think it might be Bryan. Lloyd wrote bitterly, "The poor people are throwing up their hats in the air for those who promise to lead them out of the wilderness by way of the currency route. The people are to be kept wandering 40 years in the currency labyrinth, as they have for the last 40 years been led up and down the tariff bill." In the election of 1896, with the populist movement enticed into the Democratic Party, Bryan, the Democratic candidate, was defeated by William McKinley, for whom the corporations and the press mobilized in the first massive use of money in an election campaign. There's something to be known for. Even the hint of populism in the Democratic Party, it seemed, could not be tolerated. And the big guns of the establishment pulled out all their ammunition to make sure. There are so many similarities between like every single chapter that I've read in this book and what life is like now. It was a time, as election times have often been in the United States, to consolidate the system after years of protest and rebellion. The black was being kept under control in the South. The Indian was being driven off the western plains for good. On a cold winter day in 1890, U.S. Army soldiers attacked Indians camped at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, and killed 300 men, women, and children. And that is the nice version of that story. It was the climax to 400 years of violence that began with Columbus establishing that this continent belonged to white men, but only to certain white men, because it was clear by 1896 that the state stood ready to crush labor strikes by the law if possible, by force if necessary, and where a threatening mass movement developed, the two-party system stood ready to send out one of its columns to surround that movement and drain it of vitality. And always, as a way of drowning class resentment in a flood of slogans for national unity, there was patriotism. McKinley had said, in a rare rhetorical connection between money and the flag, "This year is going to be a year of patriotism and devotion to country. I am glad to know that the people in every part of the country mean to be devoted to one flag, the glorious Stars and Stripes, that the people of this country mean to maintain the financial honor of the country as sacredly as they maintain the honor of the flag." The supreme act of patriotism was war. 2 years after McKinley became president, the United States declared war on Spain. Thank you for tuning in. Please hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoyed what you read, hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I make the next video. We're working backwards, so we'll be starting chapter 10. And we'll see you next time.